Hey everyone, and welcome to this Project Level Up session. We are recording this session on 17th of March, and most welcome to this capacity building session for the CU project. Today, let's start here. I'll change my slide. So let's start with just the overview of the actual project. So our project name tells our story. We have European, who signifies where we operate. CitiVERSE is building this new digital layer of services, connecting services, people, and solutions. And uniting is how we work, that we work with the methodology universal design for citizen-centric solutions and research. And inclusiveness of this accessible, why we are doing this, we're doing this accessibility standard across Europe. We have 4 project objectives, of course, that we keep and that we, of course, follow. First of all, the inclusive digital twin city design. Second one, AI enhanced technical development and service integration. Third one, strategic communication for project replication. And the fourth one, development of a business model. All these are relevant and up to speed. Now, about these project level up sessions. These sessions are for you mainly in the consortium to strengthen our skills and also ensure compliance and spark the collaboration and innovation across our community. And it's, let me see here, I have my little slides. So it's very much of that, those sessions, and these sessions are for different topics. And we have had since April last year, we have had a number of different sessions that we have hosted here in this studio with different topics. We have everything from interoperability, risk, prototype, business model, human-centric approach, and about the legal and legal gaps. Today we have a session with the LDT CitiVERSE EDIC, and EDIC is then European Digital Infrastructure Consortium, and our speaker here is Jan Wester. I will come to that in next slide. So this session we call From Pilot to Practice, aligning then this project innovation that we do with the EDIC strategic direction. And here we go. So this session will then address why EU is leveraging this EDIC instrument and how it differs from other European projects. And it's very important for us as a project that we contribute to this EDIC. So you will gain different insight, both how the EDIC can support us, but also how we can support the EDIC, and sharing different standards, and also reducing the risk of vendor lock-in. So by that, Jan Wester, I pronounce it now in Swedish, but it's actually now my Dutch accent isn't there where it should be. So Jan Wester, I'll say it in Swedish, but you know what I mean. Very much welcome to this session. You are the director from a couple of months back, or a half a year probably, the director of the LDT CitiVERSE EDIC. And you will provide an overview, and we will have some questions in the end. This session is recorded, and we will put it on the Teams, but we will also put it on our website later. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to add them in the chat during the session, and we will pick them up in the end of the session. So with that, Jan, I can see that you're with us. Say hi to the audience, say hi to me.
Good morning.
And then I leave the word to you, and you tell me when I should sort of click from this end, and I leave the word and the stage to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna, and thank you for the invitation. And indeed, yeah, I learned that Jan Wester is indeed also a Swedish name, so I can imagine that you pronounce it in the Swedish way, but in Dutch it's just Jan Wester. Um, and I am indeed director of the LDT CitiVERSE EDIC since October last year, so that's almost half a year. So if you could click, please, Anna. And let me start just with explaining shortly what the EDIC is all about. It is indeed a new European instrument, more bottom up than most instruments from Europe so far. And this is because the European Commission acknowledged that using calls, using Horizon, using all kinds of instruments directed from the European Commission, very much top down, is actually falling short when it comes to actual implementation in primary processes in cities and regions. So there is a gap between the deliverables from, for instance, Horizon programs or other calls like the digital the deployment calls, Digital Europe calls, of which this project is an example. And the deliverables of these calls, yeah, don't automatically find their way to the primary processes, to the implementation or even operationalization in the primary processes of cities and regions. So the idea was that there is a need for a more bottom-up approach, and so the EDIC is actually there is an establishment decision by the European Commission, but it is actually owned by the member states themselves, still on a national level. So we have 40 members at this point. Germany just joined, so that will make it 15. It's not filled in this chart yet, but they are a full member, and Poland and Finland are joining us shortly. So they are actually what I would call the shareholders of this LDT CitiVERSE EDIC, which I regard more or less as a collaborative enterprise of these member states to establish common interests that are beyond the abilities and powers of the countries themselves, and at least of the cities and regions themselves. I will get to that later in my presentation. On the other hand, there are some member states that, especially states with a sort of federative organization or with a very strong regional identity, that makes it hard to actually get membership on a national level. And in that case, it's also possible that cities and regions themselves become members of the EDIC, but we don't actually promote that because we would like to have a good combination with national programs, activation programs on a national level, and the interests of the cities and regions themselves. So we actually promote a sort of umbrella model in which the member state is actually the shareholder, but organizes an umbrella of cities underneath, themed or otherwise organized, so that we can actually move forward to the implementation. So the cities are actually well, we call them maybe implementation partners, but actually they are the biggest users of what the EDIC will in the end provide. Could you move to the next slide, please? So the mission of the EDIC actually it knows four components. First of all, we realize a common European infrastructure that will serve the network local digital twins. And that is because cities and regions are actually now working on local digital twins. But the final goal is that we move towards the European Citiverse. So it's very much on the crossroads of geodata, AI, and virtual worlds. But we start from the EDIC. We will start on the topics that cities are actually working on today, but we are aiming, the ambition is to aim for the European Citiverse, and that is actually a blended world, a world of blended realities where citizens move in and out all kinds of levels of virtualization. And where the challenge, of course, is that municipalities and governments also follow their citizens in these blended realities and actually make services available in these realities. So I myself, I am still a boomer, and I make a division between, physical worlds and virtual worlds. But I think next generation, I mean, for them, this is just one world with all kinds of realities where they go smoothly in and out, seamlessly in and out all day long. So that's quite a challenge, and if we want to address this challenge, we need an ecosystem approach because it's very multidisciplinary, and we will make this tangible and concrete through multi-country projects. I will tell a bit more about that later. At the same time, we of course enhance the capacity building, and this session is also a capacity building session, but to do so, we need a sort of common set of advanced products, services, and facilities. And this is a very important portfolio because it actually helps the cities and the regions to implement solutions, but also to harmonize the implementation of these solutions using interoperability, replicability, and portability as a tool to create economies of scope and scale. And this means that whatever we do within the EDIC, it is based on international open standard. It is aiming at securing the European values in everything, also the ethical values. But at the end, it is of course also an instrument in securing digital sovereignty also on the level of cities and regions. Next slide, please, Anna. So it is a very big mission, a mission with an enormous ambition overload, I would say. So how can we make this mission a success? I mean, this is not easy. So my main task at this moment is to narrow down this ambition and make it as tangible and concrete as possible. That's the only way we can make this work. Otherwise, we will turn into another network organization that has sessions and that matches all kinds of interests. But the aim of the EDIC is very much to become a delivering organization, an authoritative entity. So this is also why I actually call it a collaborative enterprise. We need to be able to deliver these services very tangible, very concrete on city level, on regional level. So at the same time, it has to be consistent with the European policies and the European ambitions. So the European Commission will act as a sort of guardrails supervisor, but is not actually directly involved in the EDIC. Of course, it helps to be involved in the EDIC to get finance through the European Commission, but they are not a partner themselves. The member states are partners, and everything we do needs to be focused also on activating the member states and the commissioning of the EDIC from the member states. So here it is very important that we create uh, uh, big programs, or that we connect to big programs on national level. And these could be programs on, the topic of, for instance, housing or urban development, climate adaptive urban development. But anyway, it is about the challenges that cities face that are very holistic and integral by nature, and where digital twinning can actually be very, very beneficial to get all the stakeholders together and create a common operational picture to make these policy trade-offs between what I always call, the clouds of goodness that collide. And yes, we want economic development. Yes, we want mobility, but we also want livable cities, and we also want emission reduction. So these clouds of goodness will collide somehow, and digital twinning and virtualization of process can actually help to make better trade-offs policy-wise, but also in efficiency. And the other important part why virtualization is important is, of course, in the enormous shortage of resources in Europe. Normal resources to build houses or to build roads or to do anything that we need, but also the essential resources, which is a very geopolitical item. And of course, the shortage in manpower and capacity that all cities are facing when it comes down to the things we need to address the big societal challenges at hand. And virtualization can actually very much help here. And this is where the EDIC comes in, because cities can't organize everything themselves. So there's a lot of things that go beyond their capacity. And this is where the EDIC can step in and create a common infrastructure with services and infrastructure to actually help these cities to mature their digital lab. Could you change to the next slide, please, Anna? And how do we do this? So the main thing is that we do get, as I mentioned before, the deliverables from lots of European, in this case, what you see to the left are all Digital Europe kind of programs. This is about 120 million worth of programs, and all the deliverables from these programs will actually be handed over to the EDIC with a question: could you make a sustainable exploitation model out of this? So we will get handed over the blueprints from the EU data space for smart communities, but we will absolutely combine this also with the data space, with the Green Deal data space. Those are both data spaces that are very much cross-domain, with their own challenges. But this is what we need. We need to combine, the data from different stovepipes from different sectors. So the output of one model, mobility model, could be the input for a climate model, etc. So these are the challenges that we are actually working on in the digital twin world. We also have, assessment tools. We get the EU LDT Toolbox components there. We are now actually in the process of validating them. I will tell a bit more about that later. But you also see here, of course, the four CitiVERSE projects: Excite, Sense, CU, and 3DXverse. And what we expect is that there will be interesting deliverables from these projects that actually, beyond the use cases, that will actually pinpoint the necessities that we need to organize also on a more structural infrastructure level to be able to serve these use cases and to be able to serve these services that are envisaged within these projects. So I'm very curious about that. We could talk a bit more about that later, maybe. Then we have, of course, test and experimentation facilities, and a very important thing here is that was one of my first actions, is that I developed what I call a sandbox alliance because everything that is being delivered here on the left side is being designed. It is being developed, but probably tested in a pilot way, but it's not being tested and validated in the dynamics of real-time, real-life city processes. So what we actually need is validation from the sandboxes of the cities themselves. And what I have done now is to collect cities that were willing and able to join their sandboxes, so we can actually work on a sort of harmonized way to document all these pilots, all these validations in a harmonized way, so that they can become comparable and exchangeable also between the cities all over Europe. And in that way, we will create a database that can actually form the basis of a sort of monitoring tool. So the Sandbox Alliance as an instrument for validation from practice is truly very important, and I think it's also very important for the deliverables of the four CitiVERSE projects. And I must say that there is a lot of interest from the Joint Research Center, from politicians, but also from the countries themselves in this new instrument. It's no rocket science. It's actually very logic, but it's probably also something people find interesting and tangible, etc. Next slide, please, Anna. So the portfolio we are working on, containing products, services, and facilities. What you see a lot with European institutions or European entities is that it is published and then in a sort of passive way, static way, passive way, being made available for cities and regions. Well, we would like to turn that around a bit and work from the needs from the cities themselves, which we will turn into a sort of city journey. And the cities, what we notice is that they have, well, 4 stages that they go through in a sort of development cycle. First of all, it's about a question of why, the orientation phase. So like, okay, why should I virtualize my processes? What is the policy value? What is the operational values that we are actually trying to realize? Are there best practices, inspirational testimonials? So I think that the use cases that are being developed with CU are, very much also in that category, showing what it can do, what it can actually be, because we don't know what a CitiVERSE is. We need to try to make it tangible and try to make it inspirational as well. Then if a city says, okay, these values are interesting, I want to grab these values, then the next stage is, of course, am I ready for that? What do I need to do that? So we will have baseline readiness assessment tools, so based on Lordibus, but also on other tools. And we will help cities, coach cities in their digital transformation roadmap to implement kind of, basic building blocks for the data space that is needed to actually be able to digital twin or to be able to deliver services in the Cityverse. And here comes into place what I call the open urban data space, which is a proposition from the EDIC to the cities, where we say, okay, if you implement the open urban data space, which will use the building blocks, the blueprint building blocks from the Smart Society data space and those of the Green Deal data space. If you operationalize these, then you have a sort of basic maturity level that you can do all the things that you're aiming to, and you will only have to do this once. You have to organize this once, because it's all based on interoperability. It's all based on open source. It's all based on making things portable and exchangeable. This also creates a sort of public digital infrastructure as a fundament for a thriving public-private marketplace of all kinds of applications on top of that. And here, the instrument of what I call replicable recipes is very important, because if you describe what you need in your digital twin, or what you need in your service, or what you need in your tool, in a sort of recipe, which is, of course, an analogy, then, and just to explain it shortly, I mean, if you have an onion and a tomato and a piece of garlic and some ground beef, you don't have a sauce bolognese. So you need to follow a recipe to have this sauce bolognese, and you want it to taste the same in Sweden or in Spain or in Latvia or whatever. So actually, private partners can then, if we make these recipes available as a service, then private partners can actually dig in and say, okay, I've got this component for this recipe. So if you want to realize this recipe, you can work with me, and I can deliver for this part. And this is actually what we call a sort of open LDT CitiVERSE marketplace, which is a recipe based. It is a new kind of thinking, new kind of approach, where we get rid of, the winner takes all, but the recipes are quite open, they're transparent, and they also make decisions quite transparent. And I must say that most private partners are very interested in this, and it also creates a more level playing field for startups and scale-ups. So you're not only dependent on your big tech partner as an anchor place where you can dig in, but the recipe is actually allowing you to partner with other startups or other smaller SMEs, because the recipe is actually guaranteeing you the quality outcome. I must say that the replicability of a recipe will probably be about 80%, 85%. So the last 20%, last 15%, you will always have to tweak using AI models, using AI agents, to adjust it to your local context, to adjust it to your local legal context, which is in Europe, of course, a challenge in itself. But being able to do so, yeah, then we have a sort of fundament where we have also basic quality, which you can actually tweak to your own needs. So for this, the implementation, the how, we have all kinds of building blocks there, and then we need to scale and cross-validate. And here, of course, the step 4, and here, of course, the alliance, the sandbox alliance comes into place again. Anna, could you switch to the next slide, please? And once more. So the EDIC portfolio, this is actually a clustering of technical organizational services. It's a mix with capacity, adoption, and quality services, which we can make very dedicated for cities and regions. But also we've got some general services focusing on the value creation. There has to be a business model. There has to be a way to sustain things. And of course, an ecosystem services. And this is very much European based, working with an ecosystem, based in an ecosystem. And if we have a recipe based marketplace, or a recipe based app store, some people call it, a sort of app store, then you need the ecosystem, the application ecosystem, to work well here. So next slide, please, Anna. If we plot this on the city journey, it will look something like this. where you can see that all these services are having a role in, helping cities and regions in this journey. Next slide, please. So the Sandbox Alliance, maybe just to focus a bit on that. It is a sort of new tool to align these sandboxes of these cities. Next slide, please, Anna. And as a validation instrument from practice, it is open for every city. And we will use a sort of common platform to document all these validations and all these pilots, and making them exchangeable, as I explained earlier. We are now starting, but this is not exclusive for these cities, but we are starting with Valencia, Barcelona, Rotterdam, Tampere, Riga, Pilsen, and Ljubljana. Our first actions will be to validate the EU LDT Toolbox components. But in the end, we will have more. I will explain a bit later. But to do so, it is, of course, important because the capacity in most cities are quite, scarce. So this does take some programming. So we will establish a programming task force where we can actually have, subjects, where we can have items or issues that need to be validated or tested, or deliverables that needs validation or testing. And then cities can actually volunteer to say, okay, this is interesting for me, this is interesting for my operations. I would actually pick up this challenge and then make it available for everybody else to do so. And for this, we will establish a programming task force between all the members. What we use here is, of course, the interdependent dynamics between city use cases. So it's not only about use cases. The use case is never an ambition in itself, but it does deliver, of course, the operational value. So we need to have, inspiring use cases. But the main thing is, what does this mean for the fundamental infrastructure underneath? How do we kind of organize the fundamental infrastructure underneath to be actually able to service these use cases, and not start all over again with the next use case and think of the whole stack all over again. So the basic fundament is there. Use cases can build upon it, but if use cases need a new component or an extra instrument within the fundamental infrastructure underneath, then we are actually focusing on that and make sure that it's technically interoperable. And in the end, the sandbox cities, of course, also will function as an instrument, as a showroom, making these testimonials, making things visible, making things tangible. So in that sense, they're actually an outlet for the EDIC. Next slide, please, Anna. So these are the first planned actions for the sandbox cities. So we are now starting with the EU LDT Toolbox, which is for us is also very much a sort of learning experience. How do we actually organize these things? What is needed here? How does this work within cities and within cities processes? So we are actually documenting that and finding that out at this moment. But we're also testing there how can we deliver these EU LDT Toolbox components from a central EDIC infrastructure, for instance, for smaller and mid-sized cities that are not able to implement it on-premise in their own architecture directly. So could we then, use the infrastructure from a sovereign public cloud, but also the cloud-based services from from the AI factories, for instance, that could be used. We are now, discovering how can we actually deliver services like that also for the smaller and mid-sized cities in Europe. So this will be an interesting exercise we are in the midst of now. The other one is to develop the open urban data space, where we combine the elements, the blueprint elements, the components from what is now being developed in all the pilots from the DS for SSCC and Green Deal data space. And there is a very big pilot now about raw materials, which also will make clear, the huge societal business cases that are being made here. And this one is about the circular economy, usage of the data space for raw materials, enabling circularity of, in this case, sand for buildings. And this will save billions. I mean, these are huge societal business cases to be made. And here we will also test, the simple middleware to bridge the different data spaces from the different sectors, etc. And then for 2027, we are actually planning, to validate or to give feedback to the CitiVERSE project development from the 4 programs that are now in place. So we are very much looking forward to that, see what is being delivered. We will have a better view of that, later on in this year, and then we can actually program it in 2027. Next slide, please, Anna. Very important here for also with an eye on the ambition overload that we are facing. We need to start, with a core set of services in our portfolio, very much based on what we get delivered from the projects which you see on top of this slide. All these projects have, in time, different moments where they will deliver. The CitiVERSE projects, as you can see, are more a bit later, maybe too late here in this slide, but we can discuss about that. But slowly we will be moving from, more digital twin-based services, which is very much IoT, more static data-based IoT, geo data, etc., towards more complex CitiVERSE kind of things, where AI and immersive technologies come into place, but also the privacy data, the personal data of people. So the vaults for handling personal data is then an extra challenge that we need to integrate. So this is like a developing roadmap. Maybe Anna, I'm not sure with an eye on the time, how much do I have left?
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to check with you, because next slide you have is the market infrastructure there, and if you wanna capture that, or we maybe go for questions, and I think that's
maybe there's one slide, if you could move maybe 1 or 2.
You tell me when to stop.
Maybe just this one. So what I think what is very important is that this is a stack-based kind of thing, and what I would like to highlight here is also the importance of the digital sovereignty. So here you'll see in this slide, you see the roles of the national governments, which are very much focusing on the basic things. So anything that has to do, if it's about digital sovereignty, that has to do with cloud computing, edge computing, 5G, 6G, all these kind of things, these far beyond the reach of cities and regions. but they are a must-have. So there should be some public control points here, open standards here to secure continuity, to secure all these public safety. On a city level, however, the platform intelligence level, here this is more like a need to have layer. And here cities and regions need to do their homework. They need to develop their own normative system and say, okay, this is the way if you want to work with us, this is the way the requirements that you need to comply to if you want to serve us as cities from the private sector. And here the EDIC will very much help the cities and regions to be able to do this on a larger scale. And then the application ecosystem on top is what I call a sort of nice to have, but this is very much the free public-private dynamics here. And so the two bottom layers, which is the public digital infrastructure, will lay a sort of public fundament for a thriving private-public application ecosystem. So this is basic, a picture of the thinking that we are developing. I will leave it at this, Anna.
Yeah, okay. Oh, thank you so much, Jan, for these. I think it's super interesting, and I'm glad we have it recorded because it is an important message throughout the project members, and definitely to get the grasp and understand the EDIC really well. And I think you did it really well, a good presentation as well. So I welcome Monica in the on stage, or what we will say, to have some questions. And if you from the audience have any questions, please write them in the chat. But Monica, you have prepared some questions, so we get it kick-started, right? So I leave the word to you.
Yes, and if you, Anna, can just signal for me if there are any questions popping up. But thank you so much for your presentation. I really hope that we can help you bringing success to this EDIC, and I really like that you use the word harmonized way. I think that is it's a very good approach, I think. And I have some questions. Always when you talk about this kind of initiatives, it's often gets us a little bit fuzzy or a bit hard to understand what they are really going to do. So you mentioned this Sandbox Alliance, and my question is, how can you make this concrete for a city? So what specific support can a city receive if they want to go from a solution in a pilot to a more permanent city process?
Yeah. So actually, if you want to join us in the Sandbox Alliance, the thing that you have to do as a city is, be willing to offer your own city sandbox as a playground or validation playground for some sort of topics. And if you do so, then you will get from the EDIC, you will get, the whole set of the portfolio of the EDIC, which, are tools, but is also a sort of fundamental infrastructure with these building blocks for the data space, the building blocks for the LDT Toolbox, etc. You will get these available from a central infrastructure in Europe. And there might be, different kind of things that we want to validate. We are now also in the process of defining what we call multi-country projects. We have 15 member states at this moment, and I think 5 of those states are represented by, for instance, the Ministry of Housing. Then these ministries of housing are actually facing the same kind of problems if it concerned with, digital twinning, integrating digital twinning in the plan process of their procurement of integral urban planning and development. So what we will actually do here is to have pilots or actions or whatever, deliverables that can be tested in their urban planning processes, but shared. So you will get a whole, a suite of things that can actually help making digital twinning a sort of formal part of the procurement processes for urban planning in cities. And if we get to that stage that it gets a formal step, that it's actually a formal step in the urban planning procurement process, a sort of pre-procurement, where you invite all the stakeholders and have scenarios gone through, and also with AI, you can actually have all these costs calculated very quickly. Then you're actually integrating digital twinning, etc., in the primary processes of cities. Otherwise, it will remain and stay a sort of nice to have action,
Yes.
where the digital twin is, gaining insight, and the alderman is happy because it's visualizing things, and it's nice, but it's not integrated in the primary processor. So that is very much our ambition and goal. And here we need to dig into the daily practice of cities. So this is why this instrument is very important.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I understand why you want to use like recipes to be able to share. You mentioned tomatoes and other things in your recipes, but what do you see for the Cityverse? Is it legal templates or
Yeah.
data schemas or source code and that kind of ingredients in the recipes?
Well, you can make it as complex as you want, but basically it is, of course, all about, data preparation, because you will use data from the same sources for different goals, right? So you need to prepare the data to reach a quality for certain goals. And if you use it in a sort of, a mobility context or in an energy context or whatever, the preparation might be different because the trust framework in the energy world or in the building world or in the mobility world might also be different. But in the end, you want the same quality. This is the data preparation. Then, of course, you need to describe in your recipe the model interoperability, because we are cross-domain. So the interoperability between these trust frameworks of these domains is very important. So this is about semantic interoperability. If you describe this, then the output of one model can be the input of the next model. So this is a very important aspect here as well. And then in the end, you need to have the transactions. So you need to describe the transactions, because these transactions, the policies that are there for access to data and to the users of data should be machine readable, should be technically be able to be technically enforced. And this is also something that you need to describe in your recipe. So these are three elements that are very important to do so.
I had a last question, but it seems like Anna wants to.
I'll pop in.
You pop in with another question in between, yes?
And now we're voting time, if we can have your question or my question, or from the audience. This question is from Klaus Pop-Larsen at RISE, as we have integrated with Jan, so you know him. But he says then, very good presentation, and I fully share the vision. However, the data maturity level in even digital advanced cities is still very low, and the cities are struggling with the fundamental data management and governance. So even though there is a huge amount of data in the city, these data are neither available or reusable.
Yeah.
Will this fundamental hinder be addressed in the EDIC?
Yeah, so this is very much what the open urban data space is for. So this organizes the access to data, but it also organizes, and this is also what we can describe and do in the recipes, describe the quality of data that is needed to actually reach a sort of, a quality output for digital twinning. And the open urban data space and the elements that are all the functionalities that are present in this data space and how you govern the data space is, I think, a very important instrument to address this point. The quality of data, availability of data, and therefore it will also, it's a very important instrument to enhance the maturity, the digital maturity of cities as a whole. And just to give an example, we also get offered, the European building database as now has been developed in Europe. In my opinion, this database is quite, general, but it has a sort of minimum quality that is available of all, data of all buildings in Europe. What you might like to do is then, if a city doesn't have this information, they could use this database, this European database, and use it to kickstart. But in the end, if you have more refined data available in your city, with more detail, etc., then you can actually cut the thread with the European building data space and replace it for your own data when it's mature enough. So this is also, a sort of way of growing into these kinds of. But the most important thing here is that we are then working with building blocks, right? These are all Lego parts that, that can fit into each other, but can also be replaced by each other. And in that way, you could, slowly develop the maturity in your city, and get to a level, which of course contains several maturity levels, right? So if you want to start with digital twinning, I think the maturity level might be, a bit lower than if we enter into the Cityverse. Then the maturity level should be, much higher, because it's more complex as well. Anyway, so this is things we have to find out, but this is thanks for the question, Klaus, but I think this is a very important instrument that we will develop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
I think the time is also.
a couple of minutes to go. I just wanted to ask you my last question,
Oh,
since
yeah.
we are
You have a super question.
I have a super question.
Yeah.
Since we are a part of one of those CitiVERSE project, I really would like to ask you, because we both want to contribute but also benefit from this CitiVERSE EDIC, of course. So where is the best collaboration point, or do you have any special tips or tricks for us to really get start working with this?
Well, what I would like to underline is very much, I mean, you guys are building your use cases, right? So we need to make very explicit what is needed as a fundament, as a technical fundament, to be able to facilitate these use cases. And here we could, very much join forces and then also program it in the Sandbox Alliance program, and see how we can actually benefit from that. And then it might, add components to the toolbox suite, or it might add components to the data space, or it might add, this is what I am actually looking for. I think we should get into a dialogue, what your guys are working on, what your guys are thinking of. But the important message from my side is, don't only focus on the use case itself, right? But also on the underlying, more fundamental structural things that are needed there. because there we can actually, join forces. We have a lot of use cases, and my experience is that, especially also in cities, people are focusing on use case because this is the value. Then they can name the value, but they forget to actually work on the fundamentals, the fundamental organization parts in their cities. And this is, of course, where we want to help. And I want to prevent that. If you are working on the use cases, it's hard to get to the fundamental part. So in your design, you should always be, iterative. It should be an iterative process where you continuously have these feedbacks towards each other. Because without value cases, the infrastructure is useless, right?
That's very, very, very good tips from you. And I think we're going to
End the session.
end
Hello,
this
wrap up.
session, and we would just want to remind you of the next one as well. So if we can see the next slide where we have the next project level up session, it's in the 14th.
14, we will have the topic AI.
Yeah, the 14th of April, we will continue talking about AI, which is like a huge topic, and it's also connected, of course, to the CitiVERSE EDIC. So
absolutely, yeah,
thank
interesting.
you very much for this. It's been very interesting, and I know that we are coming. We are going to talk to you a lot more, I feel, after this session. So Thank you so much. And Anna, do you want to add something?
I think you said it. Thank you. And a special thank you to you, Jan. It was a pleasure. And thank you for sharing all the insights and today's presentation.
Yeah.
So we're so grateful for having your time. So
see you.
See you soon.
See you soon.
My pleasure.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.